My name is Janelyn Holt, and I am here to present some information about our presenter, Dan Gray. I am a member of the UCAP board and really would like to just say again, thank you so much for being here. Dan's information is in your flyer, and so I'm not going to go through all of that so that Dan has as much time as possible. But just a couple of things. Dan is a licensed clinical social worker specializing in addictions counseling. He has a master's degree in social work and is a certified sexual addiction therapist. He is also certified as an addictions counselor with the National Association of Forensic Counselors. As impressive as Dan's credentials are, the most impressive thing to me about him is he is just the greatest guy and extremely qualified to be here to present this material. So please welcome Dan Gray.
Thank you, Janelyn, for that very nice introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try the Hawaiian deal. Aloha. Aloha. Doesn't that feel good? And I think it's very apropos of following Mark Shurtleff. There was a time in my life where I'd feel very intimidated following him. Now I'm grateful because of the energy that he provides. I kind of feel like we ought to have him come back and do a haka or something with us with that. What a good man. What a good man. And it encourages me to hear kind of that warrior language that he talked about. Those of you that know the work that I do and some of the sessions we've had here in the past know of my commitment to developing that humble warrior mentality in our fight and battle with these issues. And I'm just grateful to be here with you today with my fellow warriors because that's how I see you as my friends, my relatives, people that I've known for a long time, former and present clients, so many people that I've known, and I am grateful for the time to be here and to be with you. I have presented a number of times on this topic recently. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and I am having the same experience that I had there, where over the years, I guess it's just normal that it happens. I'm beginning to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest, in a group like this. And there are some advantages to it. One is my wife just, she's going to shoot me for this, but she just turned 60. And sorry, honey. By the way, if you saw me kiss a woman up here a few minutes ago before my presentation, that was my wife. I want you to know. Someone said to her, the upside, Becky, on being over 60 is at least now you'll never die young. So I've made it. And the other upside, as I've experienced here, is as you get older, you get to know so many more people. And so it's just wonderful to be here with you. Hopefully we'll be able to commune together in an atmosphere which will enlighten us and empower us in the journey that we are all engaged in here together. I want to just kind of mention two premises or important aspects of this presentation. The first, and Mark Shurtleff kind of set the stage for this, and I'm grateful to him. I'm going to have some religious talk today here. And whenever I speak on recovery, it's really virtually impossible to talk about recovery and the true essence of recovery without really addressing spiritual things. It won't be as much religion as it will be spiritual in focus. However, there's going to be some reference to some Judeo-Christian principles and references to Scripture, as Mark has done here already. So if that is difficult for anyone here, I just want you to be aware and don't want to offend, but at the same time, there's nothing else that I can do, and be honest to my own heart when I'm talking about these so very, very critical issues that we have. The other is that, yes, the title of this discussion is, it's not just about the sex or making bad choices. I want you to know that I acknowledge, yes, that We're here because of the sexual implications of this. We all know that. There are strong sexual implications in our lives and our sexuality. We are all sexual beings. We were created to be sexual beings. So we cannot separate that from this discussion. And also, bad choices obviously have been made by those who get into this behavior and become addicted to it. I acknowledge that. But today we're going to look at some of the very important underlying issues related to sexual addiction and more pronouncedly pornography addiction. Here's what we know. We know that the first average age of exposure to addiction or to pornography is 9 years. Pretty alarming. Now, there are different statistics on this. I heard 11 the other day, and I heard actually 7 from another study. Nonetheless, very, very troubling. These are 2 young men in my neighborhood. They go to the same church. They live right across the street. Just look at those faces. Doesn't that just kind of warm your heart? And these are wonderful, vibrant, lively, bright little boys. There is a likelihood that they've been exposed to pornography already in their lives. Isn't that sad? But what are they going to do with it? And how's it going to impact and influence their lives? That's what we're here to talk about. Young men like this, and young women for that matter, we know that 1/3 of all pornography users are now female, by the way. But when a young person looks at pornography, it's usually out of curiosity. They really don't know what it's really all about. They haven't really matured in the way that they can really understand what this is. They know that they're curious. There are some reactions and responses that they're having, maybe physiologically, viscerally, that's saying to them, ooh, this is interesting stuff. I want to see more. There are others that look at it and say, oh, that's gross. I'm not going to look at that again, and never do. But many then are curious and move to the experimental stage where then they experiment with it. They try it out in other contexts. They look at it with other friends, maybe all by themselves for a while, and then they develop habitual patterns because of what happens to their body, the sensations that they're experiencing that we'll discuss as well. And it becomes then an addiction over time. And with some people, it doesn't take a lot of time. We talk about the addictive component of crack cocaine, that you can take crack cocaine one time and you can be addicted with one use. There are some of us in the way that our brains work that some forms of pornography and sexual stimulation can act almost like crack cocaine to the body, activating those neurotransmitters in the brain, the endorphins, the dopamine, that then help the person feel better, especially if they're vulnerable and are struggling with certain things in their lives. So as we discuss these underlying issues, we see that there is a process of addiction that is created. And I want you also to understand that I'm not giving anyone here, as we talk about these underlying issues, that there's usually a question that comes up, well, are you providing an excuse for those who are looking at pornography or sex addicts? Are you providing them an excuse for them because we're talking about their family of origin issues and the trauma maybe that they've experienced? Are we looking to blame anyone here? No. Are there reasons why people are vulnerable and susceptible because of maybe family of origin issues? Yes. But are we looking to find blame and place blame on any person or organization for someone's addictive patterns? Some may go there. I've had clients who have attempted to do that. That doesn't last very long in my office. Generally, we want to move to that place where we indicate, and if there are those of you that are struggling with this here today, or if you're teaching your youth how to avoid it, we don't want to give excuses or place blame. We just want to understand, because understanding is knowledge, and it's truth, and it gives us power. And as I'll say to those good men and women that I work with, now that you're experiencing and receiving understanding, let it empower you. Let it make it so that you actually have more of a responsibility to do something with it. and that's a message I really want you to hear, is that once that knowledge is had, it isn't to be used as an excuse, but more as an empowering agent to create change, to then do the hard work, because recovery is hard work, isn't it? Those of you that are in recovery or that have been, you know how hard this is to do. And it takes a willingness to develop a warrior heart. Today we're going to talk about some principles and understanding that we have clinically around the process of attachment. Addiction as an Attachment Disorder is a book that was written by Dr. Philip Flores a number of years ago, showing the recent research that we have in regards to the impact of attachment in addiction, understanding the nature of addiction, and then how to utilize that understanding in creating change. We're going to talk about the specific aspects of attachment, the role that it plays in this whole scope of addiction, the origins, how it impacts then the development of the addiction, the recovery process, how we can use this understanding to then implement certain strategies to be able to recover, the impact that it has on the spouse and the families. How does attachment understanding help us in dealing with then the process of healing that is so necessary in these relationships? And then also in discussing the preventive aspect in how we deal with our children. How do we raise children that are equipped and fortified to be able to use this knowledge in staying away from the traps of addiction? First, to really understand attachment, we need to understand the concept of intimacy. Now, I'm going to ask you, we're not going to have a real opportunity to have a discussion here. We'd like to do that. But think of it yourself. What does intimacy mean? What kinds of intimacy are you thinking about right now? Most will come to a place of thinking of intimacy on maybe a physical level, which is kind of what we're talking about here, isn't it, today? What is physical intimacy? Is it just sexual expression or sexual intimacy? No, physical intimacy is we're all doing it right now. Okay, I'm looking at a couple over here with his arm around his wife. That really is nice. Good job. Those of you that don't know the person next to you, you're in here pretty tight, aren't you? So you're probably touching someone you don't know. Now everybody's really feeling uncomfortable, aren't you? Okay. Now we've got a good couple here where the wife is putting her head on his shoulder. Okay, we all have this physical intimacy. As I shook hands with some of you, that's physical in nature. And we know that certain things happen when we have physical intimacy. We know that oxytocin, which is a wonderful hormone that's created in the body, is produced in the body when we have physical touch. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's the hormone that creates the bonding between a mother and a newborn child. And it also is known to be created in the body more abundantly during sexual arousal, but it's also when we touch one another, when we have a back rub. You know that good feeling that you have and the endorphins that are being created. That's a part of this physical intimacy. What other forms of intimacy do we have? Relationship intimacy, connection between people on an emotional level, and physical helps to then accelerate that. Do you have people in your life that you've known for years and years and years and you don't know them at all? You wonder, really, who is this? I've known you, we've been in the same home together for years, but I don't feel like we connect. We don't really attach. I don't feel really bonded. Real typical with some families. Then other people, when you meet them, you feel like there's a soulmate here. Someone I've maybe known for so long, and there's that emotional bond that you feel because of that connection. So we have that physical, emotional, and then we also have what? Spiritual connection. What is a spiritual connection? Spiritual intimacy. Is it just between ourselves and our higher power or God? No, there can really be a spiritual connection that also accelerates and connects us even more on an emotional level with someone. And so understanding these concepts and knowing what intimacy means to you is very important as we go through this discussion and as you go from here and have certain forms of intimacy yourself. So we have here hand-holding, the mother and a child, two people that care about each other. And the lower one is there, a representation of our spiritual connection with God. Just take a look at your programs today. Does that warm your heart or what? Isn't that something? What kind of intimacy are you seeing there? Obvious physical intimacy. They're stacked on one another. There's smiles. There's a connection. You can tell that something just happened where they're all kind of sharing in probably a given moment. Now, with some of you, I understand this doesn't create warmth and genuine feelings of goodness, does it? It may actually create pain for you because you may not feel this in your family. You may have been betrayed in the trust that you have for a loved one. You may have been hurt. Most of us have gone through some trauma in our lives where there's been relational trauma that we'll address more. But this is an issue that we all experience. We all desire and crave to be connected and to be attached. We're going to watch a 3-minute clip here of what we call the still face baby experiment. Some of you have probably seen this before. If you would just watch and get a sense for what you are experiencing emotionally as you're watching this, if you would. Well, okay, what did you experience? I was watching the crowd here, and there was kind of a joyful connection with the connection that was going on, feelings of bondedness even to that baby and to the mother. And then when the baby started to experience pain, I watched some of you look away. It was hard to watch, wasn't it? That kind of pain of this little baby. 2 years of age, there is this natural, normal desire and craving to connect, to bond. And when that is not there, there is relational trauma and relational injury that occurs even at this young age. So for us to keep this in mind in the development of an individual as they're going through their life, and as we look at our own experience, Barbara Steffens, in talking about the abandonment, fear of abandonment, she says, "It is the fundamental human fear. It is so basic and so profound that it emerges even before we develop a language to describe it, like this little baby. It is so powerful that it activates our body's autonomic nervous system, causing our hearts to race, our breathing to become shallow and rapid, our stomachs to quiver, and our hands to shake. We feel a sense of panic that will not be assuaged until we regain a feeling of security. And sometimes that feeling of security is connecting with people that we love, but other times if they're not available, or if we've found other ways of feeling a sense of security, maybe even through addictive behaviors, even going to pornography, feeling a counterfeit of connection. We feel at least connected for a moment, and we find that peace. Now, we know in terms of our spiritual background and understanding, here's a term, a word that is used. When God said that it is not good for man to be alone. It is not good for man to be alone. Why? Well, I think we see why. Now, if we kind of take a look at the turning of the tables with this, if we believe in a God, then we also believe in evil influences. We can put that in the context of the enemy, the devil, Satan, the adversary. Satan knows that we are hardwired to connect to each other and to connect with God. And so as we look at the ploy that was used eons ago, that now is being used today in probably even more refined ways, we see the ploy and the strategy of this being. What did he do first with Adam and Eve? He tempted them to be disobedient, to go against what they and he knew God wanted them to do. And then he told them to do something. He told them to then, as they were aware that God was going to come and visit in the garden, he says to then do something. Go hide. Go hide. You are not worthy of God's love. You are not worthy of his presence or to even talk to him. And so what did Adam and Eve do? They followed his counsel. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord amongst the trees of the garden. They hid themselves. They did not want to be in his presence and talk because they were feeling what? Shame. Shame for their sin. Shame for their disobedience. Feeling now I need to be on my own. I'm bad. I'm unworthy. Does this all sound at all familiar? But whose ploy is that? We know whose ploy that is. So who calls Adam and Eve forward? God did. The Lord did. Called Adam and Eve and said unto them, Where art thou? Where are you? He knew what they had done, didn't he? He knew what was going on. He just wanted to give them a chance to come forward and talk about it. And in essence, he says, come forward. Let's discuss this. Let's talk it over. I want to be able to discuss this with you. And yes, there needs to be a consequence, but I want you to be back with me. So I'm going to provide an opportunity for you to be back with me. I want you to know my word. I want you to study my word. I want you to pray to me. I'm going to send you information that is going to be important for you to know, to be back with me. I want you to continue to discuss things with me. Come out of your hiding. Come out of your shame. Let's discuss this and process it together. Such a critical aspect. And so when we get engaged in then behavior, when we know we've done something wrong, we have a tendency to then hurt others as well. We create even that relational trauma. And this is not just for couples, although this picture will depict that. It's also for those who experience then trauma related to their caretakers growing up in their own families. Relational trauma overwhelms the coping strategies and can define the relationship as a source of danger rather than as a safe haven. I'm going to back up a slide. Because we are wired to connect with others, the closer the person who hurts us, the more traumatic that experience. The closer the person is, the more traumatic the pain and the distinct feeling of detachment and disconnection occurs. We want to pull away. We want to separate because of the injury that has been created with us. And this is where many times addiction begins. After the curiosity and the experimentation, a young person may begin to actually get involved in the addictive behavior in order to cope and manage with some relational trauma. It might be with mom and dad. It might be with peers. It might be with brothers. It creates pain. And there's the replacement for that pain, picture that we just saw, a counterfeit for that connection. Sexual addiction is a counterfeit for healthy sexuality, but it is also a counterfeit for attachment and a connection and an emotional bond with those we love. That's why it is so very important with couples where there has been this relational trauma for the focus of the work that's done, the therapy that's done, the healing that is done, is to create then that feeling and sense of bonding through the development of trust over time. With the husband doing whatever he needs to do, the hard work he needs to do to recover, showing that he's a safe man, that she can begin to rely on him, and this takes a long period of time. But there needs to be that development of sense of honesty and transparency. We're not going to talk about that in this session too much today. That will be reserved for the session just after here. But so important to be focusing, yes, on the recovery process, creating sobriety, but also in creating attachment and connection with people that we have hurt and even with in our own relationship with God as well. Now, I'm often asked, what do we do with our youth? How do we help them to avoid these pitfalls? Because as we see here, it begins very early with some, doesn't it? Most of the clients that I've worked with, when they tell their stories, they started when they were maybe not even teenagers or young teenagers starting to look at things. And they may have developed a habitual and addictive pattern by the time they're 16, 17, 18 years of age. So what can we be doing as parents in assisting and helping our youth to prepare? How do we help them to prevent? And how do we help them to recover if they are now engaged in behaviors that we know are wrong and unhealthy for them? Yes, we want to create a safe house. We do those things we've often talked about, having the computer in the right place, things that Mark had discussed. We want to teach healthy sexuality and the dangers of pornography. We need to be able to create an environment as we sit down and talk to our youth. We need to share with them our view and perspective of their experience and let them know that we are real. We need to be open, honest, and transparent with them as well. Important for us to know some of the high-risk factors as we're dealing with our youth and also as we're looking at our own experience. What are the factors psychologically that come into play? These are just a few, but some of them that we see predominantly in our practice. If we look on the left side there, we see certain types of mental illness or characteristics. Person has depression, anxiety disorders, ADHD, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, alexithymia, kind of a hard word. That is a condition where one has a difficult time getting in touch with one's emotions and then being able to convey those emotions to others in an effective way, alexithymia. And then there's trauma, if there's been trauma in one's life experience. Maybe abuse in one's experience in family or with neighbor, children and others. Trauma in regards to maybe neglect or rejection from peers. There can be all kinds of trauma. But we do know that if an individual has experienced these forms of mental difficulty in their life, that they have a higher risk of developing addiction. And I frankly believe it is because it leads them to that right column, an increased, predominant sense of loneliness because I'm pulling away from people, I'm isolating, I'm withdrawing, I'm detaching and disconnecting, creating that sense that then I am alone and I am unworthy of God's love and anyone else's love. And so then what we see is escape because of the emotional trauma that these particular risk factors create. The stress, the depression, the abuse and neglect, then leading to escape using the addictive behavior just for those few moments to feel better, for those few moments to connect. This is an acronym we use called BLASS: bored, lonely, angry, stressed, tired, and shame. As we talk to our youth and as we look at our own experience, do they know how to deal with the boredom in their life? Do they know what to do with the stressors they are experiencing? What about the loneliness that some of our youth experience and feel? You know, it's highly risky business to ask someone to go on a date now. In fact, a lot of our youth don't even know how to do it, do they? How many then they connect with a person online, or they text them and they date texting and then they break up texting? There's a lot of disconnect. And then there's a feeling of connection because they're doing it online. And there's this kind of counterfeit of emotional bonding that they're feeling with others. In Japan, they're now reporting that young men are not getting married. They're not even dating. They're very concerned with the birth rate, that eventually their culture may disappear. Many are attributing it to the fact that there's a huge problem of pornography in that culture. And young people, young boys, are saying, why would I ask a girl out when I could be turned down? Susie online never turns me down. I'm feeling lonely tonight. My friends haven't asked me to be with them. The girl doesn't want to go out with me, so I'm going to go to all those girls that I can access online. So I'll be able to connect in a counterfeit way, feel emotionally bonded, and then if I have a sexual experience with that person in my mind and through my fantasies, then I've made it. I'll be able to feel that. Worked with a young man not long ago that was raised in a family where his mother, a wonderful woman, very achievement-focused, had a hard time affirming her love for her son, and so had a tendency to then withhold her affection, withhold her physical and emotional affection. The only time that he was able to feel connected to anyone was when he was looking at pornography, because he couldn't ever please mom. He could never quite get that sense of connection and attachment to her, and Dad was always off doing things, very busy with his work. So it was a real eye-opener and powerful sense of awareness for him to realize that he wasn't just a bad guy. He wasn't just a pervert, as he would put it. That he had some underlying reasons why he was going to the sites he was going to. And his fantasies were very clear. They always were about a woman that he met that thought he was wonderful, handsome, desired, and then was willing to have a sexual relationship with him because he was irresistible. And he went there because he was feeling vulnerable and wanting to feel that connection with someone, even for those few moments. So what happens if we don't have that sense of connection? We then go underground and we experience a lot of shame associated with it because we're not able to talk to others about it. These are issues we don't talk to people about much, are they? So we kind of go underground. We don't share it with those people that we do love and that might be the most help for us because we are dealing with some very powerful core beliefs. Dr. Patrick Carnes outlines these core beliefs that have really much to do with attachment. See what they are about our self-image. I am basically a bad, unworthy person. I'm unlovable. People cannot love me as I really am. So I create an existence where I have this double life going, an image that I maintain, that I'm really bright, that I am achievement focused, I do well in my sports, I can keep this double life, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde existence going very easily because I can manage that. But on the side, I have my addiction. I'm looking at pornography. I'm feeling really lonely inside, and I'm looking for these connections, and I can't let other people really know. So then I don't let people know, so then I become a liar. I don't really share myself with others. And liars are bad people, aren't they? And so my sense of worth then even is more increased. And my needs, I can't depend on or trust others to meet my own needs because I can't even tell them what they are. I can't trust others because I've been traumatized maybe in other relationships. So what do we do then as parents? Very, very simple, not easy sometimes. We need to open up those lines of communication and share with our children, our youth, how we're feeling about things in our life. We share with them how we deal with boredom, how we deal with our shame, how we deal with not matching up and measuring up in other people's eyes. Do our children think that we're just kind of icons on a pedestal, that we have no weakness? Do we share with them our heart? Do they know how we deal with feelings of rejection? Are we giving them the tools that they need? Are we sharing our vulnerability with them? It's a real risk to be vulnerable, isn't it? To have that sense of vulnerability, to share our hearts with someone. It's a risky thing. But it is so essential for us to do to help these young people in this world that they're in today to learn how to do it. And you're the frontline teacher. If we're not teaching them how to do it, We're just leaving it up to someone else to do it, and others are not going to feel invested enough to do it correctly. So how are you as a couple sharing this with each other? Are you accustomed to sharing your heart, your feelings, your vulnerability, your struggles with your spouse? It's a good place to start if you're not doing it now. Learn how to do it so it's a normal kind of thing in a family where you discuss it. And even if the children are feeling some discomfort with it, that they keep hearing it time and time again so they know they can come to you and talk to you as this son is to this father here. That we teach them also about how do we deal with our sexual thoughts and feelings. Do your sons and daughters know how you deal with lust? Because I would be surprised if there's anyone in here that hasn't had at least a hit of lust once or twice in your life. Maybe a few more. How do you deal with it? How do you cope with all of the triggers around in your life? With that television ad, with Victoria's Secret ads that come in the paper or come in the mail? How do you deal with your own memories, the fantasies that may come into your mind periodically? Not that we get really specific to the hardcore issues of some of those struggles that we have with our children, but we let them know that we're approachable, that they can come to us for tools. My folks, are wonderful. We're great teachers for many things, but I didn't get a lot of instruction as to how to manage and cope with this in my own life. I got it from mostly my mature, seasoned football friends in the locker room. That was my instruction. And I got it from my Little League football coach, who read pornographic materials to us after practice. Yeah. See, we leave it up to somebody else. If we don't do it, they're getting it from someone else. Now, if we feel uncomfortable with the sexual content, then practice teaching them how to deal with their emotions and feelings in preparation to know how to deal with their sexuality. There are a lot of things we can instruct them to do. This is just a metaphor that I use in talking to youth. This kind of represents our brain. That kind of looks like my brain, I think. It's just a path that hasn't been really used very much. It's probably a deer trail. This represents the young mind, or a mind that's starting to think certain patterns, neural pathways of the brain. And as we then repeat things time and time and time again, those pathways become much more pronounced and deep in nature. Whether it's sexual thoughts, dealing with lust, or also how to cope with good things, virtuous things, how to deal with pressure when I feel pressure. How does dad deal with it? Okay, dad exercises. I think I'm going to learn how to do that. Mom meditates. I'm going to learn how to do that. They go on walks together. What does that do for them? Why do they do that? Well, sometimes they come back mad at each other. I don't want to do it that way. But they learn from us, and as we teach them, we learn how to do it better and more effectively and efficiently ourselves. This is just a quick picture. Look at the bonding with this picture. This is my young daughter, Corinne, born 3 months premature, tremendous trauma in her life. This is my wife then combing her hair. You see that Corinne has a trach. Can you see the looks in their eyes? See, Corinne is mentally disabled and autistic. Does she look like that there? No. Because there are those moments where she connects with me and with Becky, where she bonds. You see it in her eyes periodically. And it started back then. Corinne is now 34 years of age. It lasts for a lifetime. So we teach our children how to do that. We need to close here in a few minutes. So, in essence, recovery is not just about abstinence and sobriety. If we focus specifically on that and look at recovery just as a person not acting out anymore, and this is helpful for those of you that are church leaders doing counseling with those that are struggling, that we just don't want to focus strictly on the addictive behaviors, because we're missing probably then 90% of where we need to go. It's a white knuckle sobriety, just stopping the behavior. Real recovery is a lifestyle change. It's learning how to connect. It's learning how to do life differently. It's learning how to deal with boredom, stress, loneliness, anger, the emotional traumas that we've experienced. We take ownership and we work and learn how to do it right. That is what real recovery is about. And then with the healing power of our higher power, our soul is cleansed. Trust is redeveloped in our relationships. We're able to connect, feel those attachments. They taste good, so we want more of that. It feels right, so we repeat it time and time again. It becomes a part of the way that we think and the way that we do and the way we work with others. We bond, we feel that love and bondedness with each other so that we can have this. Feel that connection with those we love. To again restate what Pamela said earlier, there is hope. This works. People heal. The power of recovery is a wonderful thing to witness and to be a part of. God bless you. Thank you for being here today, and be the humble warriors and continue in your life to be so. Thank you.